All right, you may go ahead and have a seat. Thank you for being here with us today. Now, today is a little bit of a different day because typically at this point, I would be dismissing our kiddos to head off to their classes, but our kids are gonna be staying with us today. However, if you have a younger one and at some point they get a little antsy and you're like, I'm not sure we're gonna make it, that's okay. The nursery is open for some of our younger preschoolers if that's what you need to do, and you can utilize that at any time. But today our kids are staying with us because this is our Serve Sunday. We typically take a Sunday once a quarter in order to gather together and work on a small project so that we can bless others. And before I describe that project and sort of frame out what we're going to be doing today, I wanted to take a second because there is a team that works on these projects to create them and to make sure that we have all the supplies we need and imagine them. And I just wanted to thank that team. So if you're a part of our Serve Sunday team, can you just stand up for a second, and we want to thank you for what you've done. And you guys were terrible at that, by the way. Like, you failed that completely. But yes, there is a team. They prefer to work behind the scenes, and I appreciate that so much. But we are so very grateful for you guys organizing these projects for us so that we can participate in them together. As a congregation, we've been in the process of looking at Matthew 6, where Jesus is teaching us about how our relationship to our stuff actually is connected to our relationship with God and with others. Because ultimately, Jesus knows that what we do with our stuff and how we relate to our money and our possessions tells the truth about how much we value and love both God and other people. And that's a really hard thing because we want those to be separate. But Jesus says, listen, the most true indicator of how you love God and how much you love other people deals with what are you doing with your stuff? How much are you holding on to it? How much are you giving it away? And so Jesus actually gives us 4 teachings in the Sermon on the Mount about how we deal with our stuff. And we've looked at 3 of them so far. Next week, we're going to look at the 4th one. But just as a reminder, in Matthew 6:19, the first teaching goes like this. And this should trigger for many of you. Yes, we've talked about this. This is what's happening. Jesus tells us, do not store up stuff for yourselves, treasure on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, or sky treasure, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. In Jesus' first teaching, he urges these listeners not to store up their earthly treasures, but instead store up the sky treasure, which has an economy that's vastly different than anything here on earth. And when we use our earthly possessions to love God and love each other more rightly, we invest in the coming new creation, which contains everything we will ever need. It's sharing, not hoarding, that gives us the security that we long for. Then Jesus gives us this next teaching. He says the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be filled with darkness. And then the light within you is darkness. And how great is that darkness? In Jesus' second teaching, he gives us this riddle about our relationship with our money and our possessions. That our eye is the lamp of the body. And while it might be lost on us as modern readers, it's this nod to this common cultural reference that having a bad eye meant that a person was stingy. And when our eyes are darkened, we cannot see the abundance of God all around us. This scarcity causes us to cling tightly to what we have, causing us to lose everything. But a good eye illuminates the abundance of God and the abundance of the world of God has created. And when we can see that abundance, it allows us to live open-handedly with our possessions. And this type of generosity creates these new kingdom possibilities. And in the third teaching, Jesus says this: no one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and mammon, or money. In Jesus' third teaching about money, he warns us how easily it is for wealth to take the place that only God can fill. Jesus used this word mammon as the thing that rivals God's position. Mammon is translated the thing in which you trust, the act of practicing generosity and fasting from stuff that might result, can reveal what our real mammon is and help root out our love and trust of money to cultivate this greater love and trust in God. Now, this is all the stuff we've already talked about. And if you're like, I have no idea what you just said, go listen to the other sermons and it's unpacked a little bit better. The problem with trusting in the wrong thing, like our money, our wealth, our resources, is that you're asking wealth to do a thing that only God can do. Wealth can't save us from death. Wealth can't save us from depression or loneliness or pain. Wealth cannot redeem and restore us or the world. As tempting as it is to think that it can, the truth is only Jesus can do that. And when we continue to look to our wealth and our possessions to do what only God can do, we will continue to be disappointed and crushed. But trusting in Jesus can bring us life, and life to the full. Now, I imagine when Jesus was standing on the plain or the mount, depending on how you translate that, right? When Jesus was standing there and he was giving this sermon to his followers, I imagine that his followers were thinking, what am I supposed to do with that? I imagine that they heard these really hard teachings and they wrestled with them in a similar way that I hope that you are wrestling with them, that I know that I am wrestling with them. Part of the wrestling is this recognition of like, Jesus paints a picture of this is how generous we're supposed to be with our stuff. And I'm like down here and you're looking and you're like, there is such a far distance between what Jesus is calling us to and where I actually am. And how am I supposed to change, to close that gap? How are we supposed to move closer to what Jesus is calling us to do and to be? And sometimes we wrestle with this reality of like, I don't feel like being more generous. I don't feel like doing what Jesus has called me to do. And I know that I'm supposed to be like a happy, cheerful giver. So I'll wait till I'm happy and cheerful about it till I do the thing Jesus calls me to. But are we supposed to feel our way into a new way of doing things or do our way into a new way of feeling about things? I'm going to tell you a geeky thing about me. It really dates me back to 2000. Like it makes me very much be I went to high school in the 90s and 2000s, okay? I really love watching Survivor. Still. Nobody else watches Survivor, I'm sure of it. But I am waiting for September 18th when the next season of Survivor comes out and I can begin to watch it. I don't know, it's my dishes show. It's the show I watch when I'm doing the dishes and sometimes when I'm really tired and just want to fall asleep anyways, and I'll rewind and watch the episode again the next night and fall asleep and then rewind and watch it again, right? Survivor is my show. Now, if you're not familiar with this show, it takes a bunch of contestants, it strands them on a deserted island. Typically, the seasons recently have taken place in Fiji, all of them. I think it's just more cost affordable for them to keep going to the same place now. And so they're all in Fiji, and then they have to like compete in these like strength competitions and they're all starving and they're all like wasting away, and then they vote each other off the island, and then they change up the teams, so they have to like find new alliances, and I just find it fascinating. And one of the things that most recently happened in the most recent season that had come out was there was this guy named Charlie. They have this reoccurring competition challenge where you are stuck up to the top of a pole and everyone just has to hold on to the pole as long as possible. So here's what this looks like. So you got all these contestants, they're all starving, and they're on top of this pole, and whoever can hold on the longest, they win immunity and they can't get voted off that night at tribal council, right? And so they're all holding on and holding on and holding on. In this particular season, I'm giving it away. So if you're waiting to watch the season, I'm going to tell you who wins this one. Charlie wins this one, okay? He wins immunity because he can hold on the strongest. Now, Charlie is like this nerdy guy. It doesn't really look like he's very strong, but he's making some good alliances. And, I was rooting for Charlie, honestly. And when me and my family watch this challenge, we all talk about what is the best way to win this challenge. And Zach has told me the best way to win the challenge is you have to keep your body real low, like your center of gravity and your weight real low, and you got to keep your arms straight because this is the strongest position, right? So in my head, I know how to win this. I have the knowledge of how to win this game. Actually being able to do it is 100% a different thing. And feeling like you want to win it when you are up on that pole and your entire body is shaking and you're hungry and you just want to give up and your brain is telling you you are uncomfortable and you do not want to do this. Those two things, being able to do it and feel like doing it, totally different things, right? But this guy named Charlie wins this past season. He holds onto the pole the longest. And when they are interviewing him, what Charlie said is that when he applied for Survivor 2 years ago, so he turned in his application 2 years previous, he noticed that the majority of the challenges, particularly the individual immunity challenges, all come down to grip strength and forearm strength. And so what he started doing 2 years previous is just like working on his grip strength. He got all of those little gripper things. He did all these little exercises just for his forearms and his grip strength. So the guy looks like me, but he's got these forearms and these grip strengths that is like a monkey, like he could just hold on to anything. His ability to win this challenge did not start with him feeling like he wanted to hold on to that pole in that moment when he's up there. No, it started 2 years previous when he began this habit of just picking up these grippers every day and working on building these muscles in the smallest little insignificant parts of his body. And all that practicing led to him being able to hold on to this pole for a really, really long time. Now, if we want to become people who live like Jesus calls us to live with our stuff, to be people who are super amazingly generous, even when it gets uncomfortable, even when we don't feel like being generous, it begins with practicing. It begins with practicing in these insignificant parts of our body that everyone else would be like, what does that matter? You're just doing this. You're just filling these bottles to give to people. You're just giving some money to the church. You're just going to your neighbor and bringing them something encouraging. Why does that matter? Because becoming the people that God has called us to be, being able to be exceedingly and amazingly generous, begins with these small practices that become habits, and those habits become embedded into our lives. And honestly, that's what our rule of life is all about. The early Christians had these habits that totally surprised the world. They were just these ordinary believers who devoted themselves to living these regular rhythms of generosity and hospitality, of being Spirit-led and Christ-like, of being missionaries in their own neighborhoods to the people that were right around them. And these habits of blessing others and eating with others and listening to the Spirit and learning about Christ and being sent to others, it got on them and it got in them. And it became a part of who they were. The regularity of these ordinary people living out these habits surprised the entire world around them. And the people around them began to be curious about, what have you experienced in your life that has resulted in you being so habitually generous, so habitually hospitable? And that's how the gospel began to spread. Notice that what surprised others was not that they came to a weekly church service. Nobody cared. Nobody cared about that. As important as that isn't the thing that surprised the world. It was the way that they lived their lives. It was the way that they practiced unity with other believers while propelling them into the lives of not yet believers. They had these habits that didn't deplete their energy or burn them out, but rather energize them, replacing their reserves and connecting them more deeply with Jesus. And these are the habits and practices that our rule of life is all about. It's these habits and practices that we live out on a weekly basis. And like any habit, when you pursue it and practice it long enough, it gets on you, it gets in you. And it becomes so natural for you to do that you don't even think about it. It just happens. It's a part of the fabric of your existence. And that habit begins to change everything about the spaces you exist in. And so today, now most of those habits we do individually. We do outside of this place. We practice them when we're at our workplaces and when we're in our neighborhoods and when we're in our households. But today, we have an opportunity to practice as an entire congregation the habit of blessing others. And so we're going to learn about the project we're going to be doing. I'm going to invite Nathan to come up, and he's actually going to give us an overview of what this project is, where it's going, who it will bless, and also how it is we're going to do this together. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. I don't know how I followed up the analogy of Survivor, but it's not about me, so it's okay. It's all right. It's all good. So as Beth said, we're going to practice blessing others collectively as part of a rule of life. We have the opportunity to do this as individuals throughout the week where we rest, work, and play, but today we can do it collectively. Matthew 19:14 says, Jesus said, "Let the children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." So today we're going to have an opportunity to work together to bless children in our community with these sunshine bottles. Thanks, Miss Alicia, for making this a wonderful example. These bottles will be donated to the Clarksburg Closet to give to children in need throughout the school year. So half our congregation will start over here at the note-making station. There's some examples on the table of what you might say in the note. You'll fill out the note, you'll take it with you, and the other half will start here at the bottle cleaning station. At the bottle cleaning station, you'll take an alcohol wipe, clean part of the bottle, dry it off with a paper towel, and stick on the sticker that's provided on the table. Then everyone from there will follow the same pattern. We'll go to the stuffing station. There's 2 bottle stations, so you don't need both, one or the other. At the stuffing station, you'll take a small handful of stuffing to fill the bottom of the bottle. Then you'll move to the 2 school supply stations. They have a bunch of little things on there like pens and pencils to help with the homework that good teachers should be giving. Right, Lara? We had a good conversation about homework today. It'll tell you on the table how much to put in each. There'll be some stickers, some fidgets, some pens and pencils, and pencil sharpeners. That table's in the back as well as over here. Then from that station, you'll go to the card making station. If you already have the card, you can put it on top. If you didn't, you can write the card there. You put the top on it and put it in the box by the speaker. If you look over there and there's more bottles left, feel free to continue that process once more until all the bottles are filled. One thing I was thinking about when I was preparing to say stuff about the task of filling the bottles is that I'm a very task-oriented person. And so I want to make sure that as I'm going through the task of filling the bottles, I'm not just trying to check a box, which is often my demeanor and personality. We're also thinking about the anonymous child who may be receiving this gift of the sunshine bottle, right? So we're thinking about and praying about that child who probably needs more than this bottle, but this will also bring them some happiness as well. If you are online, we encourage you to take this time to serve others by reaching out to someone in need of prayer, assistance, or guidance, and to join us that way. So I'm going to turn back over to Beth, and we'll get started at either the bottle cleaning station or the note station.
All right. Now, at the end of this, we encourage you to stay around because we're actually going to pray for all of the bottles together. We're going to symbolically do a prayer over them as a blessing over them to pray for the kids who will be receiving these bottles from the Clarksburg Closet. And then we'll sing one more song together in praise and worship of God, and then we'll close out our service. So are you guys ready to begin? Are there any questions about what we're doing? Yes.
Which part of the bottle do we need to clean?
Oh.
Just the outside where you're going to stick the sticker at.
Perfect. Okay, are y'all ready? Yeah. All right, let's go. So if half can start at the notes note making station and the other half at the bottle. That'll be great.